have never liked being alone in a house, like a full-on house with multiple rooms. I don't mind my own flat, but there's just something about a house that makes me feel unsafe. My unease with large houses has always been a part of my life. So when my parents decided to take a vacation and asked me to dog sit and house sit at our old family home, I knew I was in for a challenge. Their house itself is a massive, creaky structure with countless rooms, long hallways. The weight of the place pressed down on me the moment my parents left for their vacation. Since my roommate was in our flat, I just slept in my parents' house instead of wasting money on gas by driving back and forth. So I was alone in the house, except for Spot, my parents' dog. One rainy night, as I lay on the couch, Spot suddenly jumped up and started barking. He usually only did this when there were unfamiliar people around, so I always get up to peek out of the window. He paced around the living room, darting between the doors as if he sensed something I couldn't. Even though I knew that most of the times it could just be a cat, a bird, or anything, I still wished I had someone there with me. Spot's barks grew louder, echoing through the dark hallways of the house. My unease escalated as I strained to listen for any unusual sounds. After 2 minutes of my dog looking at the front door while growling, a loud, echoing knock resounded from the front door. My heartbeat was so loud I could literally hear it. Spot continued to bark, which made me feel a bit safe, but it still meant it was someone he hadn't seen before. It was so late, and I hadn't heard any cars pull up, so I was confused too as who would be knocking at the door on such a rainy night. I cautiously approached the front door. Outside, there stood a man, drenched from head to toe in rain, and his clothes was clinging to his body. He looked as if he'd been caught in a downpour.
Can I come in?
He asked. My instinct response was just, why? He told me his car was broken down further up the road, and he had no money for a bus. I was curious as to why he chose my house, and not some of the other houses that he had passed while walking to my house. I mean, if his car was broken down further up the road, that would have made more sense. I hesitated. Spot continued to growl at the man, but I couldn't bring myself to turn the man away. It was pouring outside and he seemed desperate for shelter, but I still wouldn't let him inside. So I told him that I would only let him in to make a phone call, but then he had to leave again. He took a step inside and closed the door and stood at the entry while calling from my cell phone. He told me no one answered the phone, and asked once again if he could stay until someone called back or for at least 15 minutes, just to make sure. I thought it would be okay if I just waited with him. So we stood there and made some small talk. While we stood in the hallway, he seemed too composed and calm for someone who had just been caught in a rainstorm with a car that is broken down. He asked if he could use the bathroom while we waited, and since I could see the bathroom from where we stood and keep an eye on him, I thought why not? I reached in my pocket to grab my phone, just to kill time. When I opened it, my contacts were the first things that popped up on the screen, and that's when I noticed something that really made me freak out. I could see on my phone that the last call that had been made was to my dad, which meant that he hadn't been calling anyone. So why would he wait inside for 15 minutes until someone called back? This scared the shit out of me, and I had to confront him about it to get him out, and I had no idea what he would do. I questioned my decision to let him in. Why would I be so stupid? I quickly headed to my parents' room since my dad had a gun in their nightstand, but when I got back, the bathroom door was open, and the man wasn't in there anymore. I called the police. Meanwhile, I stood still, listening for any sound that could indicate where the man was, but I couldn't hear anything. I noticed a trail of water leading towards the kitchen, and I figured it had to be from the man, since he came from outside completely drenched. I followed the trail and yelled out that I had a gun. As I rounded the corner from our kitchen and into our living room, the door in the living room was left open. The police arrived and looked for the man around the area, but they didn't find him. The cars on the road further up all belonged to the people who lived on the street, so none of the cars were his. I was driving down the long and deserted road alone in my car. I had been driving for about an hour in this heavy rain, and I was getting really tired. All I wanted was to get home and get into my cozy bed. While driving, I felt something moving in the trees beside the road. I ignored it and tried to look at it again from my side mirrors, but couldn't get anything from the view. As I turned my eyes back to the road, I saw something strange emerging from the darkness. It appeared to be a person lying unconscious right in the middle of the road amidst the heavy rain. My heart raced, and I instinctively slammed my foot on the brake, narrowly avoiding a potential accident. I couldn't believe how someone could remain unconscious and submerged in water during such a heavy rainstorm. My car screeched to a sudden stop. I took my jacket, placed it over my head, and jumped out of my car, exposing myself to the rain, and rushed towards that body to see what had happened there. It was a lady, lying on the ground, not moving at all. I was really scared and didn't know what to do. I tried to check her pulse, or any of her belonging which could help me identify her or anyone related to her, but there was nothing around her. She was not moving, and it was as if she was dead or unconscious. I couldn't figure it out at that point, but I was sure that something was definitely very wrong. As I stood there, puzzled, frightened, and thinking of calling the police, I heard a strange noise coming from the nearby woods, and I felt that I saw the same thing that I saw while driving. I turned around and noticed that something was moving in the trees. It was a strange figure of a tall man, and it was staring at me with big, eerie eyes. A shiver ran down my spine, and I knew that something was very wrong. Without thinking much, I turned and sprinted back to my car. I jumped inside and locked all the doors. The figure, which I thought to be of a strange man, came out of the trees and gripped the body of that lady on the road from her foot and dragged her into the trees beside the road. Before disappearing into the trees, he stopped and suddenly turned towards me. I could see anger in his eyes. I started the car and sped away immediately, but I could still feel the strange figure's eyes on me like they were following me. I drove for some time. My mind was racing with fear and confusion. I had a gut feeling that I was being followed. Every shadow on the road seemed like a threat, and every noise made me jump. Finally, I pulled into my garage and got out of the car. I ran to the front door of my house and quickly unlocked it. I threw the door open and rushed inside. I locked all the doors and windows. Then I leaned against the door and tried to catch my breath. I was finally safe inside my home. I was trembling with fear. Then I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I took a sip, trying to calm down, but I couldn't stop thinking about that creepy man and the eye contact I had with him. Who was he? Why did he drag that woman into the trees? These questions swirled in my mind like a whirlwind. I had a glass of water in my hand, and I was standing in the kitchen with my back facing the window. I got a feeling that someone was standing right outside the window in the dark, just behind me. As I turned to look, there he was, standing on the other side of the road. That same strange man I saw on the road, drenched with water, creepy smile on his face, and with same angry eyes looking right at me. I don't know if they were contact lenses or what they were, but they were creepy as hell. I got scared, and in an attempt to run away, I fell on the floor. While lying there, hurt on the floor, he had approached the window and began tapping on it. He kept on tapping the window and suddenly stopped tapping. As I got up to see, there was no one standing there. I stood on the floor and tried to somehow get into my room. As I was about to turn, I caught sight of the same figure standing across the street. And this time, the woman I saw, lying almost dead on the road, was standing right beside him. And they were just looking at me. I stood still there for some time in a state of shock. Both of them were still standing there. I ran into the living room and called the police. They came and found no one in the area. I was sure that it was them standing just outside my kitchen and then across the street. But where did they go? I still don't have that answer. I could not sleep for some nights after that, and I even had to take therapy sessions to get out of that experience. I don't believe in ghosts or any paranormal thing because I know there are scarier stuffs than that. We all talk about how we would react in case we were in a dangerous situation. But the thing is that when you're in that position, when you're in that place, you really don't know how to react. And I think that's what happened to me when I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw what I saw out of the window. I had to go to a very old town to get some stuff my parents left. Some paintings and bags, nothing very important, honestly. I had heard about the town a lot, and I was told that it was very beautiful, very classy, so to speak. The architecture seemed old, and at the same time, all of them took care of it. The house belonged to my grandfather, and everyone knew him before he passed away. I also must mention that lots of people in that town were old people. When I arrived, a few of them welcomed me. They knew who I was. They walked me to the house, and when I saw it, I was astonished. It had 2 floors, and by looking at the whole structure, I knew that house had a lot of history. Everything was pretty, until one of those people beside me told me, "At night, no matter what you do, don't look at your window." When I asked why, they just left. They faded, but it did not look like a joke or even a sort of legend. It seemed like something real. That really shook me. But in that moment, I realized something else. Suddenly, out of nowhere, everyone's facial expression changed. They did not look kind or lovely. They looked worried and avoided eye contact. Anyways, I went inside the house. It was abandoned, obviously. What could I have expected? I started coughing too, because it was really dusty. I left my bag on the living room. Every sofa was covered with a plastic layer, every chair and the huge table. There were some old cans that I clearly did not want to open, and a weirdly old refrigerator. I went to the bathroom and I saw a huge mirror. I think it was the biggest mirror I had ever seen. I left and I went upstairs. I found 1 bedroom and a library. I got in the bedroom and, putting aside the dust, it was a very cozy one, I am not going to lie. It was great. But there was also a big window, but no curtains, that led to the street. When I got closer, I saw something strange. There was an old man with yellow-looking eyes looking straight at me. His expression startled me. Even though some people were passing him by, he did not move at all. My heart started racing, and I stepped away. I went downstairs, and before leaving the house, I was breathing hard. I did not know what that was. I had to go out to buy some water and food at one supermarket near this house, because there was absolutely nothing in there. When I got out, that man had disappeared. I was walking and I asked an old lady who that person was. She just told me that I should be careful, and the same that these other people told me, don't look out of the window. I wanted to know more, but she left. I bought everything and I returned. I did not get in that bedroom again. I gathered everything I had to take with me during the next day, and at 10 p.m. I went upstairs to sleep. I wanted to leave as soon as possible. After 2 hours, I heard something. I ignored it at first. I was too sleepy, but that sound got louder and louder, a sound that came from the window. I did not want to get up and see what it was, and then I instantly recalled what I was told when I arrived. But humans' curiosity is bigger than any other thing. So my tiredness disappeared. I turned around and I saw that same man with yellow eyes at my window, knocking on it as if he wanted to break it. I stood up, screamed, and ran towards the door. I did not know how he got there, but there was no time for questions. I went downstairs and I heard someone knocking on the door. It was around midnight. I went to the door and I did not open it. But through the window I saw that man again. But things got even weirder when I heard him knocking on the door and the window at the same time. It was a terrifying lullaby, and I did not know if it was real. Suddenly everything stopped and I noticed that he slipped a note behind the door.
You're not welcomed here.
I still try to think if that was a nightmare or something that really happened. And I knew it was not a nightmare, because I saw the note right there, just where I left it. I got my things and left that house. As I walked towards my car, I felt better, knowing that finally I was going away. But something else confirmed that what happened was real, because I turned my head back and I saw the same man. I could still visualize his yellow eyes, his strange expression, and even though he did not say anything to me, I understood that he wanted me away from this place.